I will talk to you about the meta-human and the meta-society. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of the meta company. And I think they just stole the concept and they should pay royalty for it. Let's speak about the original sense of the meta word. It's coming from Greek and it means comprehensive and transcending. So we are going to speak about comprehensive and transcending, human and societies. Why do I tackle this? Well, I tackle this because there are certain phenomena which are happening in our society today which are going to have huge, huge impacts. Of course, it has to do with technology, but as a sociologist, I have to say that it has to do more with processes, with habits, with stuff which is happening every day and hidden in plain sight. So we are going to talk about flexible communities, we are going to talk about algorithms, we are going to talk about self-building meta-brains, we are going to talk about the improved human and the virtual societies, and at the end I will also tell a little story, my favorite story of all time, at the meeting of technology, business, and humanistic. So, the sociologist in me, looking at history, I can tell you something. Societies are always changing, but they are changing not because ideology revolutions are happening. They are changing because technological revolutions are happening. And those are actually changing habits and mentalities, not the other way around. You will hear a lot about changing ideologies. You will hear a lot about cultural revolution. They are like a fire of straw. They will be ending in 5, 15, or 50 years. But the technological revolutions have wide, far-reaching impacts, and actually, they never cease to produce effects. So, first of those effects, let's talk about ourselves. Most of the things we do every day probably work. Probably entertainment and probably some sleep, but mainly work. Something has happened, and that thing which has happened is actually that work started becoming more modular. You, me, Mr. Ștefănescu, all of us actually adapted to new ways of working. Some more and some less. Why is that important? Because it creates certain habits. We are used not to join a sort of place, but we are used to tap into resources. And I will tell you a bit about those resources. We are used to tap now into modular structures of our companies, of our work groups, of our tools, and that creates a self-reliance and a different way of actually perceiving the world and your impact on it. And that is number one trend. This is going to stay for a while, and there was a question regarding the metaverse, education and training in the metaverse. Well, wait until you see the work in the metaverse, because it has started, and these are the sprouts of it. But let's go a bit into something which is very, very connected to that. In order for us to be working into modular structures, to tap into flexible resources, in behind there are some processes which are actually an infrastructure, which are actually ensuring that for us. And most of it is actually AI-driven algorithms which verify that stuff we work with is A, real, and B, functional. That has attracted most of the investments in hardware all throughout the past decade. And you know what happens when you invest in hardware? Well, hardware generates the need for additional hardware. And additional hardware creates capacity. Capacity, technical capacity, maintenance capacity, and at the end, availability capacity. Those things, which I call the hidden AI in plain sight, are sometimes visible just in a Google search query. But that is very important, because that is information which we work, all of us, we work with. But somewhere in behind, there is a mega structure and mega investments which are ensuring that we actually get the results of our query right. And that is just like a simple examples of our everyday habits. But in work, when I tap into my company structure, somewhere somebody invested that when I take a couple of keywords, I get exactly what I want. And that creates capacity. And that capacity today, or yesterday to be honest, was a bit more simple. But tomorrow, it will become a meta brain. People are going to be superhumans. Superhumans, why? Because some of us, of course, will have the instruments to tap into resources which are so technologically enabled that will transform us into superhumans. And now to push the story a bit further, some of us actually will have embedded technologies within ourselves. You probably know all the movies on Netflix and the Black Mirror series. I can assure you it is going to happen during your lifetime. Wait a minute, did I tell you about your lifetime? It is going to be prolonged by AI and sensors, and you, hopefully we can afford it, you will become superhumans. And that, coming with the connectivity it entails, brings us the next mega trend. And the next mega trend is our digital twins. We exist, of course. I am Ionuț. I'm happy to be here. Wait till you see my digital twin, how happy he is going to be on all the networks where I am present. Of course, that's a joke, a stupid joke. But going forward and thinking of how much infrastructure is behind, how much of that has the capacity to replicate and improve itself, how much of that is going to interact with our body and our mind. Speaking about a virtual community and a virtual society and what somebody calls the network state without borders is not really something of a wild imagination. It is going to be real. And here, things get serious. And I get to the serious part of my presentation. What does that mean for us? Well, it means, first of all, that we all have to acknowledge one thing. New power is being created exactly now. All this ecosystem is based on a simple rule. It starts with humans, and it starts with what they understand about it, how they perceive it. If we don't educate our people, our communities, our young people to use AI as a resource and data as a capacity, of course, at some point, somebody will ask, what is this? Why do I need it? And then you don't have a modern society. Then you have the village museum. With that, let me summarize a bit. AI today is in the position where printing press, steam engine, or electric motors were a couple of decades or centuries ago. It is here exactly in those positions. A fundamental technology which spills over in other sectors, which determines basically all the run of all sectors. We can't afford to miss it. And not least, let's realize we are all here. Speaking of that, I told you I have a little story at the end of my presentation. And that little story is between math, technology, and finance. We often hear in the tech sector the word algorithm. Algorithm comes from a guy in ancient Persia, which was called Muhammad Al-Khwarizmi. And Muhammad Al-Khwarizmi, in that century of his, once was asked, what is the value of a human? And he said, the value is 1. If the human has common sense. If he is beautiful, add a 0, therefore 10. If he is rich, add another 0, therefore 100. If he comes from a noble family, add another 0, therefore 1,000. But Al-Khwarizmi said, if the people, that person, lacks common sense and character, you can subtract the 1 and you'll remain with the 0. So it all boils down to character and common sense.